All right, the second part of Pythagorean theorem notes. The converse of Pythagorean theorem. As you remember back in chapter 2 when we talked about the converse, is where we take our if-then statements and reverse them. So it now becomes if a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, then triangle ABC is a right triangle. So if this triangle can satisfy the Pythagorean theorem, then we know it's a right triangle. So let's take a look at example 3a, identifying a right triangle. Triangle has side lengths of 85, 84, and 13. Is the triangle a right triangle? Explain. Well, if we take a look here, we have three sides of a triangle, a right triangle. Now, we have to know that the hypotenuse is always the longest side, which means 85 is going to be our hypotenuse. So as we set our Pythagorean theorem up, we say 13 squared plus 84 squared is equal to 85 squared. Now, we'll go through and we will check to see, does 13 squared plus 84 squared in fact equal 85 squares? If it does, it's a right triangle. If not, then it's not a right triangle. So 13 squared is 169. 84 squared is 7,056. And 85 squared is 7,225. So we add these two together, 169 and 7,056, and that gives us 7,225, which does in fact equal 7,225. So therefore, this is a right triangle. So yes, triangle, or the triangle is a right triangle. All right, you guys try part B. The triangle has side lengths 16, 48, and 50. Is the triangle a right triangle? Yes or no? All right, let's see how you did. We get 50 as our hypotenuse, so we're going to take 16 squared plus 48 squared is equal to 50 squared. So now we square 16, which was 256. 48 squared is 2,304, and it's equal to 50 squared, which is 2,500. We add these two together, and we get 2,560. And we bring it down to 2,500. Because these are not equal, then therefore it is not set up for the Pythagorean theorem. So we say no, this is not a right triangle. Now, if it's not a right triangle, what type of triangle is it? It's either going to be one of two, an obtuse triangle or an acute triangle. So if we look here, if it all comes to c squared, if c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, it's a right triangle. If c squared is greater than a squared plus b squared, then it's obtuse triangle, because the angle C here is bigger. Since this is longer here, it makes this a bigger than 90-degree angle. So it is obtuse. And if it's acute, its c squared would be less than a squared plus b squared. So everything comes down to the hypotenuse. If it's equal to a squared plus b squared, it's a right triangle. If the hypotenuse is greater than a squared plus b squared, it's obtuse. And if it's less than, it's acute. So let's take a look at some examples. Here we have 4 different triangles. Each one has 3 sides. We're going to set it up and see what type of triangle it is. So let's take a look at the first one together. Triangle A. 6 squared plus 11 squared is equal to 14 squared. 6 squared is 36. 11 squared is 121. And 14 squared is 196. 36 and 121 is 157. And it means it is not equal to 196. 157 is less than 196, so our hypotenuse is greater than a squared plus b squared, which means this was going to be obtuse. Okay, you try the next one. Pause the video, and we'll come back and work it. So let's see what you got. We have 7 squared plus 8 squared is equal to 9 squared. 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, and 9 squared is 81. Add these two together, we get 113, and 113 is greater than 81, and since a squared plus b squared is bigger than c squared, this triangle is going to be acute. Now this one looks a little different. We have a radical. Now we've discussed this before where when you're squaring a radical, because as we write this down, it's going to be 3 squared plus 2 squared is equal to 3 squared. Now if you take the square root of 3, if you're not sure which one is larger, which one's smaller, if you take the square root of 3, it's 1.7. So that is smaller than 2, and 3 is then our largest side, so that becomes our hypotenuse. So if we're going to square radical 3, that means we're going to take the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Well, the square root of 3 is 9, and we know the square root of 9 is equal to 3. So if you remember what we also discussed about where squaring undoes square roots, we're going to be left with the number underneath the radical. So this becomes 3, 2 squared becomes 4, 3 squared is 9. 3 plus 4 is 7. Bring down the 9. 7 is less than 9, so this means that the hypotenuse is greater than a squared plus b squared, which means this is obtuse. All right, you guys try part D. Pause the video, work it out, and we'll go over it in just a second. All right, so we take the square root of 7 squared plus 3 squared is equal to 4 squared. Square root of 7 is going to be just 7. 3 squared is 9. And 4 squared is 16. 7 plus 9 is 16. 16 is equal to 16, which means we have a right triangle. All right, let's take a look at a word problem now. Example 5, using Pythagorean theorem to solve word problems. Hubble Space Telescope orbits 600 kilometers above Earth's surface. Earth's radius is about 6,370 kilometers. Use Pythagorean theorem to find the distance x from the telescope to Earth's horizon. Round your answers to the nearest 10 kilometers. Once again, the diagram is not to scale. So, what we're looking at is we're looking at another right triangle. The telescope is up here. The Earth's horizon, as you're looking over here, is right here. This is our radius of 6,370, and it says that the telescope is 600 kilometers above the Earth's surface. So, because this is a right angle here and a right triangle, we're going to take x squared plus 6,370 squared is equal to, now it's going to be our hypotenuse. Now what we have to find the length of our hypotenuse, because this is only part of the hypotenuse. Now because this is the radius, and a radius goes from the center of any circle to any point on the circle, that means this is also a radius. These are both radiuses, which means this is also 6,370 from here all the way to here. So we have to add these two together. And when we add those together, we get 6,970 kilometers. That means it goes from here all the way down to here. So now that gives us our hypotenuse, which means we're going to be squaring 6970. Now these are very large numbers, and a lot of them you can just do in your calculator. But I'll write them out here so you can see how it's worked out. So x squared plus, now 6370 squared is 40,576,900 equals 6970 squared is 48,580,900. Subtract this number from our hypotenuse. And x squared is equal to 8,004,000. Take the square root, both sides, and x is going to be approximately 2829.13413. And it says round to the nearest 10 kilometers, which means the 10 kilometers is the ones and twos. The 10's placed right here, so the 2 is in the 10's. It means the 9 is going to round it up to 2,830 kilometers. All right, that concludes part 2 of lesson 8.1. In part 3, I'm going to give you some practice problems for you to work and the solutions to them.